So Trofeo Pirelli race 1 about to come. And as Alessandro Vezzoni has said, it requires a different skill set, really, this night racing. Not the first time, as indicated previously in Abu Dhabi and also in Daytona, but here in Misano is where the night race is this year, and there is our pole sitter, Niklas Nielsen. Having a conversation with him just before heading to the grid. He put in that pole position lap, chased all the way by David Fuminelli and Björn Grossman, it has to be said. So the cars roar into life then, and here comes the grid in full for you. Niklas Nielsen, alongside him is David Fuminelli, then it's Björn Grossman, Alessandro Vezzoni, Johnny Lawson and Jens Liebhauser complete the first 3 rows of the grid. All the information at races.ferrari.com. Then we find the best of the AM drivers, Fabian Volvend with Thomas O'Rourke, John Dillon, Martin Nelson. Welcome return to Martin Nelson. Then it's Christian Overgaard, Chris Froggatt, and John Sawbridge then bringing up the rear of the pack. And the safety car leaves the grid, and the cars will follow in just a few seconds' time. And let's hear right now.
Hello, I'm Jens Liebhauser, competing today in the Trofeo Pirelli as a pro driver for AF Corse Formula Racing. Today is my birthday, and I'm gonna rock it. I try to be as fast as I can, and last year we were in Monza, my birthday, today Misano. Hopefully it brings me the same luck than last year. Thank you, guys.
I didn't quite have time to say, we're going to hear from Jens Liebhauser, who celebrates his birthday. Happy birthday, Jens, and good luck in the race. He's the guy going from P6 on the grid. So the formation lap underway then. And just some of the drivers have adorned their cars with LEDs to make them look even more special in the night time. All the social media at the top of the screen for you if you want to be part of the Ferrari challenge action. And of course, it is races.ferrari.com, the website. So we'll do our level best to pick out all the runners and riders in the dark. All the lights are on, of course, and the floodlights as well. And there's something very special about the cars roaring around a circuit at night. And it is the Trofeo Pirelli cars that get that privilege in darkness today. Tomorrow, it will be the Copa Shell drivers that are out there as nighttime covers the circuit. Back on board with Alessandro Vezzoni then, going from the second row of the grid, P4. As always, rolling start then for the Ferrari Challenge cars. Cars weaving from side to side. As Alessandro Vezzoni was saying, that with the theoretically with the temperatures dropping as we get into nighttime, therefore the tyre degradation should be less obvious. But the track temperature and air temperature, actually the ambient temperature, has actually increased. So, as he indicated, don't necessarily, and along with the abrasion of the surface, don't necessarily think that that is going to make any difference during this night race. So the cars get into their grid formation then. The safety car will peel off into the pit lane. And there you can see the Jens Liebhauser car, the birthday boy. As he says, he celebrated his birthday at the Monza track last year, this year here in Misano. So just a few turns to do before rounding turn number 16 and heading towards the start-finish line. So Niklas Nielsen and David Fuminelli will go side by side as we allow the music now to build the tension ahead of the start of race 1 for Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli. Lights go out then, and Niklas Nielsen converts that P1. And also trying to come through is Björn Grossman as the haze of headlights run into turn at number 1. But David Fuminelli has managed to see off the charge and challenge from Björn Grossman for the moment for that P2 place. Niklas Nielsen converts P1 into the race lead with relative ease. And right at the back of the pack is John Sawbridge. So already some drivers making their way around the outside on this, the opening lap then. And one of those that will be trying to get up the road is Chris Froggatt. We're on board with Alessandro Vezzoni then. You can see the LEDs on the left-hand side of this picture. Alessandro dropping down from 6th down into 4th gear, fighting with the steering wheel as he's right behind the car of Bjorn Grossman. From 6th down to 4th gear, the turbocharged Ferrari 488 Challenge, a fantastic car. And just look at the front and rear brake discs as they light up. I said Chris Froggatt would be a man on a move, and already he's got past John Dillon and finds himself behind Martin Nelson now. So the tyres scream in protest as they are put through their paces. Fabian Volvend then in the Octane 126 car, the best of the AM drivers, and Alessandro Vezzoni down into 3rd gear, gives it plenty of revs, into 4th and into 5th before just taking his foot off the throttle for the left-hander, stays in 5th gear, up into 6th, no, down into 4th, having to engage 4th gear for turn number 16. But now this blast along the start-finish straight, still tracking every move that Bjorn Grossman makes. Bjorn Grossman just takes a look at the inside of David Fuminelli. They are within 3/10 of each other. And whilst they're fighting over that P2 place, it's allowing Niklas Nielsen to escape up the road and open up a 1.6-second margin already at the front of the field. This is how much pressure David Fuminelli is under then from the car of Bjorn Grossman, the German driver for Octane 126. And he is tracking him. He's almost into his gearbox. Takes a look, shows his face to the inside, but was unable to make a move at that point. But it's a question of if, not when. Or when, and not if, rather, as Bjorn Grossman dives to the inside now. But again, not quite close enough. Look at this, the toe. He must be getting off the David Fuminelli car. But, of course, he's also running in the dirty air that's coming off the back of the David Fuminelli car as well. So he needs to act and get the overtake done as quickly as possible. David Fuminelli himself, a very experienced racer, knows exactly where to put the car to deny Bjorn Grossman. And thus far, he has been able to do that. And Alessandro Vezzoni, of course, trying to buy into the battle in P4 as well. In the AMS, Fabian Volvend leading from Tommaso Rocca and Martin Nelson. And already P4 in the AMS is Chris Froggatt right from the back row of the grid. Brilliant charge from the British driver Chris Froggatt then. John Sawbridge has also got past Christian Overgaard. So start-finish straight once again. We can see from being on board with Alessandro Vezzoni as once again Bjorn Grossman all over the David Fuminelli car now. Just trying to provoke a mistake from Fuminelli ahead of him. Because the longer this goes on, it means that Niklas Nielsen becomes completely out of reach because he's 2.6 seconds up the road. And the reason for that is, of course, as these three are fighting, it's a three-way fight for P2 at the moment. It means that Niklas Nielsen can just quietly go about his job and increase his margin to 3.2 seconds in the first 4 minutes of this race. The pace that Niklas Nielsen has is remarkable. He's the only driver that's lapping in the 37s. Of course, he has a very, very clear track ahead of him. Bjorn Grossman trying to look at the inside, but David Fuminelli making sure that he defends well and doesn't leave enough of a gap for Bjorn Grossman to drive into. Wherever Grossman is trying to put the car, David Fuminelli is wise to it and is closing the door. So Grossman there now again just took a look at the inside, but nothing doing as they brake for the next turn. What he needs is Fuminelli to make an error, but David Fuminelli, as I said, is a hugely experienced both single-seater and GT racing driver. Come to that, of course, Bjorn Grossman, a very experienced driver as well, and using all his experience and prowess to try and find his way past David Fuminelli, but thus far he has been denied, and will be denied once again going into turn number 1. For my money, Bjorn Grossman's brakes are being worked even harder than David Fuminelli's, and the one that he's not having to try too hard is that man, Niklas Nielsen, who goes through in the lead. with 3.7 seconds ahead of the battle that's going on. And as I said, it's a three-way fight for P2, really, because you've got David Fuminelli, Björn Grossman, and Alessandro Vezzoni all pretty close together. Grossman again showing his face to the inside. But nothing doing as both Grossman and Fuminelli and everybody else runs wide at that turn. So the brakes squealing in protest then at the pressure that's being put through them by David Fuminelli, and Octane 126 is Björn Grossman. So 137.729 for Niklas Nielsen, a 138.862 for Fuminelli, a 138.939 for Björn Grossman for the last laps. Fuminelli doing PBs through Sector 1 and Sector 2, which means that he was just marginally quicker than Björn Grossman. And sure enough, there's a couple of car lengths now between David Fuminelli and Björn Grossman. Now, I think Björn Grossman here is just using a bit of strategic nous and just allowing the car to cool a little bit before having another go at David Fuminelli, almost lulling David Fuminelli into perhaps a false sense of security. We will see. In the AM standings, it's Fabian Volvend from Tommaso Roca. Then it's Chris Froggatt, who is already in a podium place in the AM standings, and Martin Nelson, who is in P4. So we have 6 pro drivers leading the way, and that is the car of Niklas Nielsen, the best of the lot, who is 4.5 seconds up the road. He is consistently lapping in the 37s, the high 37s, whereas the next 2 drivers are in the low to mid 38s. So Niklas Nielsen, of course, with no trouble ahead of him. He's got no cars ahead of him, and he is able just to focus on each and every turn, and Formula Racing engineering a perfect car for him, and he's able to drive it at absolutely 100%. A very, very talented young driver is Niklas Nielsen. So there is the leader of the AMS, Fabian Volvend, for Octane 126. So the discs on all 4 wheels lighting up as Fabian Volvend puts the pressure through the braking pedal to slow for each and every turn, and then back on the throttle once again. So both Niklas Nielsen and David Fuminelli exceeded the track limits at turn 15. That has now been picked up by the race stewards, and here comes Chris Froggatt then on Tommaso Roca. He's reeling him in. Look at the pace that Chris Froggatt has got. It's a battle for P2 in the AMS. This has been a remarkable drive from Chris Froggatt. He started from last but 1 place on the grid. Had a problem in qualifying. Basically, it was something really innocuous, like a pipe had come off, but it prevented the car from being able to restart, so his quali time was not one to write home about, and he knew he was going to have to work very, very hard in this race, and he is doing a fantastic job. It is an awesome drive from Chris Froggatt, flashing his lights furiously at Tommaso Roca, hoping to get Tommaso Roca to make an error, which will allow Chris Froggatt to go through and occupy that P2 place in the AMS and try and set after Fabian Volvend. Although Fabian Volvend has got some 5 seconds of margin, so he's going to have to work really, really hard. But you can see he's being frustrated here by Tommaso Roca, who's a bit like a cork in a bottle for Chris Froggatt at the moment. And Chris Froggatt just needs to be released, but as I've said on many occasions before, it's all very well being as quick as the driver ahead of you. You've got to find a way past as well. And on this technical circuit here at Misano, it's not easy. And if Tommaso Roca is not provoked into making a mistake, as Froggatt just took a look around the outside there, that will have cost him perhaps a couple of car lengths. And I just hope that Chris Froggatt doesn't get too frustrated being stuck by Tommaso Roca, and he himself makes an error as he runs really wide there. He gets a bit of a slingshot off there that actually helps his momentum, truthfully. And now he's got the inside going into the next turn, or has he? No, Tommaso Roca had just got enough momentum. So Frogger is flying and really pressuring Tommaso Roca. And this is perhaps allowing Martin Nelson to get back into this battle as well, because the more these two fight, they're being slowed by virtue of the fact that they're having to concentrate on what they're doing. Interestingly, car number 39, John Sawbridge, is exceeded track limits at turn 15 as well. We get those messages up on our timing screen and feel it only fair to bring them to you in case a penalty should be awarded, but at the moment it's not even a warning. So just for the moment, I think Chris Froggatt has eased off a little bit again, perhaps just to let things cool. Now here, this battle hots up once again, as I thought it might, as Bjorn Grossman and David Fuminelli go at it hammer and tongs then for this P2 in the race overall. It's the battle that we're watching for Trofeo Pirelli Pro honours. And look, it's gone from, at its worst, it was 0.6, the margin between the two of them, and now Bjorn Grossman has brought it down to just over 0.2. So the cars virtually welded together around turn 16 now. Bjorn gets a little bit of a toe off the back of the David Fuminelli car and will dive for the inside, but Fuminelli is wise to that, and wherever Bjorn Grossman is trying to make it work, Fuminelli is putting the car where he needs to. So Fabian Volvend has made her way past Alessandro Vezzoni. So whether Vezzoni, who has lost out to a number of drivers, whether he made a mistake. Car 84 has exceeded the track limit at turn 15. Well, we saw that slingshot, didn't we? So this is where Vezzoni made an error then and lost a load of places. And it was going through the final turn. We could see that he'd dropped down the order, and that's the reason why. And now Christian Overgaard is another one that... no, Vezzoni has dropped even further down the order. Thanks for picking that up for me. He's down to P12 now. So big problems for Alessandro Vezzoni, the pro driver. Nielsen, look at this. 6.3 seconds up the road from David Fuminelli. I mean, Niklas Nielsen is just driving like a... He's consistently lapping. He's come out of the 37s now and is lapping in the low 38s. Interestingly, Bjorn Grossman was nearly 4 tenths quicker than David Fuminelli on the last lap. And this is Chris Froggatt then, still battling with Tommaso Roca. Tommaso Roca, P2. This is good news for Fabian Volvend, who's able to increase her lap to almost, her margin rather, to almost 6 seconds ahead of Tommaso Roca, Chris Froggatt, and also Martin Nelson is back in this game. So P2-3 as Chris Froggatt goes all over the rumble strips in his quest to try and get past Tommaso Roca. Martin Nelson could be the big beneficiary here, because if these two continue to fight the way they are, then Martin Nelson might just be rubbing his hands with invisible soap at the moment, thinking, I'm going to pick up the pieces here when this goes horribly wrong for both of them, which it could. And there you can see Chris Froggatt almost having to take a different line there to avoid contact with Tommaso Roca ahead of him. Car number 2 being told to respect track limits at turn 15. That's David Fuminelli. Now, they'll only get so many advisories about these track limits before penalties are issued. So now you can see it's a three-way fight for P2 in the AMS between Tommaso Roca, Chris Froggatt and Martin Nelson. And Chris Froggatt is trying to use the outside to try and unsettle Tommaso Roca, but what of course he can't afford to do is leave the window open for Martin Nelson. We just about reach half distance, and in comes Alessandro Vezzoni. This looks like a race retirement for the Rosso Corsa Pellin racer. Car is lifted, perhaps it's a puncture. So the team are going to work on the car, and Alessandro Vezzoni is not getting out of the car, so I'm hoping it is just a puncture and he will be able to resume. Certainly not a quick... Come on, get the hurry up, Tommaso Roca, his team tell him. And Martin Nelson is right alongside and passes Chris Froggatt. Now, I said this could happen. So Martin Nelson, just wonder, you know, whether this was half a strategic move by Chris Froggatt, who thinks, right, come on, you have a go then, and see if you can get past Tommaso Rocca. I don't think so. So, your Europa driver, Martin Nelson, is the one that will chase down the Rosso Corsa racer, Tommaso Rocca, now, because he is ahead of Chris Froggatt. So, this takes Chris Froggatt out of a podium place at the moment. I mean, his achievement to be up there in P4 in the AMS is remarkable, given that he started, as I say, on the last row of the grid. A fantastic drive from Chris Froggatt to put himself all the way up the order here. But after lap after lap after lap of trying to find his way past Tommaso Rocca, Martin Nelson does get through, and now it's he that will be chasing down Tommaso Rocca. And for my money, it doesn't look like Martin Nelson has got the pace of Tommaso Rocca, so Tommaso has escaped up the road a bit. And talking of escaping up the road, although Tommaso Rocca makes a mistake there, that allows Martin Nelson to get right on him. I'm just wondering, you know, whether the tyres are beginning to degrade perhaps a little bit quicker than the drivers anticipated, because the cars are sliding around a little bit now. All of a sudden, Froggatt comes back at Martin Nelson. Martin got within just a couple of car lengths of Tommaso Rocca, but now has dropped back a bit. So Froggatt will have another go at the Scuderia Autoropa driver to try and pick up the final podium place. In the meantime, Tommaso Rocca just concentrating on his own job. This will play right into his hands, because Martin Nelson and Chris Froggatt, the more they battle, then of course it just allows Tommaso Rocca to get up the road. I remind you that Fabian Volvend is leading the AM battle at the moment in P1, and she's actually 8 seconds up on this battle. So that means with just 12.5 minutes remaining, that's how Martin Nelson got past. It was a mistake from Chris Froggatt. Glad we saw that in replay. So an error from Chris Froggatt, and that allowed Martin Nelson through. Just looked like the car got away from him, didn't he? That was around turn 16. But now he's taken the hurry uphill and is pushing Martin Nelson once again. So the race leader is Niklas Nielsen by 6.5 seconds. P2 is David Fuminelli, and P3 is Björn Grossman. This then, the battle for second position in AMS. Three-way fight between Tommaso Rocca, Martin Nelson and Chris Froggatt, who are running in P2, 3 and 4 respectively in the AM class, as the graphics indicated. And Chris Froggatt now all over the back of Martin Nelson, the Scuderia Autoropa driver. Look at this, he's getting the toe off the back of Martin Nelson's car. Martin puts his car dead center in the middle of the track to deny Chris Froggatt either the inside or the outside, truthfully. Under braking, Chris Froggatt gets oh so close to the back end of Martin Nelson. This brings back memories of the fantastic fight they had in Valencia last year in Spain. They were brilliant to watch, and it's brilliant to watch now. The Fuminelli-Grossman gap is at 9/10. So Fuminelli looks pretty comfortable in that P2 place at the moment, but just when you think you're comfortable is when Björn Grossman will turn up and try and bite like a viper. You can see the Chris Froggatt car almost alongside Martin Nelson now. But Nelson has got the inside for the next turn. So Martin really being put under pressure here from Chris Froggatt, but to be fair, he's soaking up the pressure and not making any errors at all. And just making sure that every window of opportunity to Chris Froggatt is firmly closed. And Tommaso Rocca is about a second ahead of them now. So he's not been able to escape up the road, because the pace that these three, who are all fighting over this P2 place, has remained fairly consistent. Meantime, let's go back to this battle for P2 in the race. which is between David Fuminelli and Björn Grossman. You can see how that gap between Fuminelli and Grossman has really opened up now. And whilst I'm not suggesting that he's not going to have another go, as both cars number 2 and 84 get the warning flag for track limits, and that is David Fuminelli and Björn Grossman, and just as we say it, they both exceed the track limits. So if they're being given the warning flag, they know to take notice of that. Right. This is Johnny Lawson and Jens Liebhauser. Jens Liebhauser celebrating his birthday, chasing down Johnny Lawson, who returns into the Ferrari Challenge this year. The Copa Shell champion, elevated into Trofeo Pirelli. He's running in P4. Jens Liebhauser is running in P5, and there's just 4 tenths between the two of them at the moment. Whichever way you look in this Trofeo Pirelli race, there are battles going on, and we are into the final third of the race already. I remind you, the top 3 in the pro drivers: Nielsen, Fuminelli, Grossman. The top 3 in the AMS: Fabian Volven, Tommaso Roca, and Chris Frogger. 8.5 minutes remaining. Local time about 20 to 11 at night here in Misano. And Johnny Lawson then for Formula Racing, Jens Liebhauser for the same team. And no team orders in this, that's for sure. Every driver fighting for every place that they can. So Frogger has got past Martin Nelson again. Sadly, we didn't see that, so we were focusing on this fight that was going on between Jens Liebhauser, and Liebhauser makes a big mistake there, and that allows Johnny Lawson to get up the road. So Chris Frogger is once again ahead of Martin Nelson. So Chris Frogger currently is occupying the final AM podium place for P3 because he has got ahead of he has got ahead of Martin Nelson. So Niklas Nielsen leading by 6.6 seconds over David Fuminelli in the pros. And Fabian Volvend is about 8 seconds up the road from Tommaso Roca. The gap, though, from Roca to Frogger is merely 5 tenths. So we can expect a fight on for P2 in the AMS. This, though, the gap between Larson and Liebhauser is very nearly 2 seconds. So there the Johnny Lawson car. Great to see Johnny Lawson back out in the Ferrari 488 Challenge car, following his Copa Shell success last year. So the Roca-Frogger gap is coming down by another 10th. Hopefully we'll pick that battle up in a moment. It is the battle for P2 in the AMS, which in truth is considerably closer. This is the leader in the AMS, Fabian Volven, going through. And sure enough, here is the battle for P2 in the AMS then, between Tommaso Roca and Chris Froggatt. So Froggatt then has got the hurry up, has got himself past Martin Nelson, and now is reeling in Tommaso Roca. This is phase 2 of the overtaking plan from Chris Froggatt. He had a go earlier on and was denied. I have to say, very good defensive driving from Tommaso Roca to have denied him, and he soaked up the pressure from the British driver right behind him, and is having to do so all over again now. And to keep this relentless pressure at bay for another 5.5 minutes, Tommaso Roca will be doing a very good job indeed. So Froggatt then trying to use every single centimetre of tarmac just to gain an advantage over Tommaso Roca and try and provoke an error, which thus far Tommaso Roca has not made. They've both broken away from Martin Nelson by a significant amount. Couple of seconds, to be honest. Froggatt looks inside, then outside, in his quest to go by the Rosso Corsa racer ahead of him. Just 4 more laps of this battle. Can Tommaso Roca hold on for another 4 laps? Well, the drivers can only imagine how hot they are inside the cars, because the ambient temperature is hot enough. When you're inside a hot 488 as well, and driving as hard as both Tommaso Roca and Chris Froggatt are, must be stifling in there. So the standings in Pro: Nielsen, Fuminelli, Grossman, then Lawson, Liebhauser. Bezzoni, of course, in the pit lane. Then the standings in Am: it's Fabian Volven, Tommaso Roca, and then this man, Chris Froggatt, whose run up to P3 in this race has been remarkable, because he started on the last row of the grid. Now, whether he finishes P2 or P3, actually, he deserves great plaudits for his drive. But he's a racer, and he's not prepared to accept P3 if he thinks he's got a hair's breadth chance of getting P2. And talking of hair's breadth, that's about as close as they are together. The gap is merely a hair's breadth. But Tommaso Roca, it's been a fine drive for him so far, because he's soaked up this pressure. First from Chris Froggatt, then from Martin Nelson. And across the timing line they come once again. Tommaso Roca making sure his car is right in the middle of the track, which is going to deny Chris Froggatt to get the opportunity, although Tommaso Roca runs a bit wider, but he has still got the inside for the second part of the chicane. Just wonder whether Roca is just looking a little bit more ragged now, trying to eke out some more grip from those tyres as he pushes the car so hard. So Chris Froggatt then, who may choose to leave it right to the last minute for the decisive move, and he did that in one of the races at Spa-Francorchamps, where he won the race by merely thousandths over John Sawbridge, fellow British driver. That would have been John Sawbridge's first win, but you can see the Chris Froggatt car sliding there as he tries to scrub off the speed for the bend, and that has cost him a couple of car lengths. But he soon recovers that and gets back onto the tail of Tommaso Roca. So under protest, the brake discs light up once again in the nighttime racing here at Misano. Into the left-hander now. And now Chris Froggatt is closer than he has been to Tommaso Roca. It is the outside. Tommaso Roca will still have the inside for the next turn, but if Chris Froggatt can hold on to this, it will be the overtake of the race. He's done it. Absolutely brilliant driving from Chris Froggatt. Clean, tidy, superb overtake. He set that up really at turn 16. You can't help but feel a bit sorry for Tommaso Roca, who defended so well, but that was a brilliant overtake from Chris Froggatt, which gives him P2. He's got no chance in the 54 seconds remaining to get on terms with Fabienne Volved, barring some technical disaster for Fabienne, because she's like 9 seconds up the road. 7.5 seconds up the road from David Fuminelli is this man who is leading the race, Niklas Nielsen. And he rounds turn 16 now and heads towards the timing line. And this will be the last lap for Niklas Nielsen for Formula Racing. And this will be Niklas Nielsen's 5th win of the 2018 season. There you see, it was turn 16 where Chris Froggatt set this up perfectly. Just out-dragged Tommaso Roca and had to have the confidence in the car to go around turn 1 all the way around the outside, but it did give him the inside for the next turn. A supreme overtake. So great to see that in replay. Credit to both of the drivers. giving each other respectful racing room. Really enjoyable. So Niclas Nielsen then heads towards his fifth win of the 2018 season. Bolt that in onto his 2 wins at the end of last season. He has been a phenomenal success story in the Ferrari Challenge, Niclas Nielsen. He is so worthy of his racing success, an extremely talented driver. I've commentated on his career in tin tops, in single-seaters, and now in these fantastic Ferrari Challenge cars, and he's not once really failed to impress me, and his drive in the Ferrari Challenge has been supreme. And in this night race in Misano, he has once again proved what a talent he is. Heading towards the checkered flag, Niclas Nielsen then will take his 5th win of the season. He weaves from side to side to the delight of Formula Racing. He takes P1. David Fuminelli heads home Björn Grossman for P2. Grossman then P3. Then it will be Johnny Lawson that will take P4, ahead of Jens Liebhauser. Then it will be Fabian Volvend, the winner of the AM class. So the lady racer takes the win. And then superb driving from Chris Frogger, which has seen him from the back of the pack up to P7 overall, but it's P2 in the AMs. And Tommaso Roca will take P8 in the race, but P3 in the AMs, and Martin Nelson just denied a podium. Then it will be John Dillon, John Sawbridge, and Christian Overgaard to complete the finish of the Ferrari Challenge Trofeo Pirelli race, nighttime special here in Misano. What a fantastic race. Well done to all the drivers. A stunning display. Made even more special in the darkness, if truth be told. And there is Christian Overgaard, then the final finisher. So the winner in Trofeo Pirelli Pro, Niclas Nielsen for Formula Racing. Good drive from Niclas. And winner in the AMs for Octane 126, the lady racer, Fabian Volvend. 2 wins in the last 2 races in the AMs for Fabian Volvend, incidentally. So the cars will be brought into Parc Fermé. And then it will be time for the drivers to celebrate on the podium. So everyone making their way down the pit lane towards the podium under the floodlights. Confirmation of the top 3 in each category then. Niclas Nielsen, David Fuminelli, Björn Grossman, the top 3 in Pro. Fabian Volvend, Chris Frogger, Tommaso Roca, the top 3 in Trofeo Pirelli AM. Well, team boss of Formula Racing, Alan Jurgensen, down there, the first to congratulate Niclas Nielsen as he jumps out of the car. Great drive from Niclas Nielsen. As I have said, a fine talent. And out of the Octane 126 car then, Björn Grossman gave it everything, didn't he, right at the start of the race. He indeed is another supremely talented racer. And that's really, really nice to see. Straight away goes and offers his congratulations to David Fuminelli. It was a really hard but fair fight right at the start of the race between the two of them. And Fabian Volvend, the winner in the AMs then. Congratulated by her parents down there. And another very good drive from the accomplished lady racer. Let's take a look at the highlights. And as the lights went out then, we knew we were in for a good race in the darkness here at the Misano circuit. Niklas Nielsen converted that P1 into the race lead relatively comfortably. Immediately, David Fuminelli was going to be under pressure from Björn Grossman, and that pressure would remain for several laps. Alessandro Bezzoni was trying to take advantage of it, and this is how close they got. And this was perhaps even a more intense battle. Alessandro Bezzoni with an error here, which presumably caused a puncture, and he ended up in the pit lane. But this challenge from Chris Froggatt on Tommaso Roca went on for lap after lap after lap, and in the end he got right alongside Tommaso Roca and needed to be extremely brave to go all the way around the outside of turn number 1, but it would give him the inside for turn 2. Job done. Great overtake from Chris Froggatt then, who had made his way up to P2 in the AMS right from the back of the grid. Taking the win for the pros. Niklas Nielsen by some 6.3 seconds, to the delight of Formula Racing, and taking the win in the AM classification. It was going to be the lady racer Fabian Volvend for Octane 126. So, confirmation of the classification in the pros. Then Niklas Nielsen from David Fuminelli and Björn Grossman. Then it was Johnny Lawson, Jens Liebhauser, and Alessandro Bezzoni, regrettably a DNF for him as he was in the pit lane. Confirmation of the result can also be found on races.ferrari.com, of course. And we will bring you the classification for the pros as well, which is for the AMS as well, which is Volvend, Froggatt, Roca, Nelson, Dillon, Sawbridge, and Christian Overgaard. We're going to head up to the podium next for the celebrations of both the pro and AM drivers. Jens Liebhauser. I mean, the camaraderie between the drivers within the Ferrari Challenge paddock is to be admired, as each of the drivers jump out of the car and then make their way to the end of the pit lane to support those that will be up on the podium. And we're going to see Niklas Nielsen, David Fuminelli, Björn Grossman, also Fabian Volvend, Chris Froggatt, and Tommaso Roca. So podium being readied as we speak. And Michele Mambelli, who's there, will bring on the drivers for the podium ceremony. P3 then in pro, Björn Grossman. David Fuminelli takes P2 for his 5th win in the season. Niklas Nielsen goes to the top step. Francesca there from Formula Racing taking her place on the podium to represent the teams as the anthem plays out. So for the 5th time then, he's on the top step of the podium. And the official Ferrari GT driver, Andrea Bertolini, is here to make the trophy presentations. First of all to Björn Grossman, then to David Fuminelli, and then on the top step of the podium, with the win for Trofeo Pirelli Pro, for Formula Racing it is Niklas Nielsen. And the Pirelli Trophy presented by Stephen Rowe, the Pirelli Tyre Development Manager, to Niklas Nielsen. Everyone gets together for the photographs then on the podium.
Everybody on the first step of the podium, please. Everybody on the first step of the podium. Please, together. Ok? Tutti sul gradino più alto del podio, queste sono le foto e riprese in notturna dal Misano overtaking Marco Simoncelli, una bellissima serata e preludio anche di una giornata soleggiata per domani, questo lo dice il meteo. Siamo quasi pronti per la bassa attenzione.
I just have a feeling that Francesca didn't escape from the champagne. Andrea Bertolini did. He exited stage right. So top 3 then. We've just seen them up there. Björn Grossman, David Fuminelli and Niklas Nielsen in super slow-mo for you. So we stand by for the AM podium to come with the glittering Corsa Clienti hospitality area in lights. The Drivers' Championship. Niklas Nielsen on 140, Björn Grossman 114, Henry Hassid, who is missing this weekend, on 55 points. So you have to say that Niklas Nielsen has got a comfortable position in the points at the moment as we head to race 2 tomorrow. And here comes the AM podium now. We'll see Fabian Volvend, Chris Froggatt and Tommaso Rocca. So Tommaso Rocca then, and Chris Froggatt. And the great respect between Tommaso Rocca and Chris Froggatt for what was a fantastic battle between the two of them. And Fabian Volvend on the top step of the podium once again. And Octane 126, the team that will be there, and the national anthem will play out for Fabian Volvend. So Andrea Bertolini once again will make the trophy presentations here in Misano. Tommaso Rocca then receives his P3 trophy. Next up, Chris Froggatt with a remarkable drive takes his P2. And Fabian Volvend lifts high the P1 trophy. And Octane 126, of course, the team's trophy. Stephen Rowe once again will make the Pirelli presentation to Fabian Volvend. So photographs all being taken. Mr. Bertolini making haste his escape then before the champagne is underway. Not entirely sure Fabian's aim was very good with that. But they all enjoyed it up there, and deservedly so. Fantastic effort. So top three in the AMs then. Tommaso Rocca took P3. P2 went the way of the number 93 car, Chris Froggatt, who fought with Martin Nelson, let alone Tommaso Rocca. And then, of course, P1 went the way of Fabian Volvend, who, to be fair, looked untroubled throughout the race, truthfully. Did all the hard work in qualifying and then converted that into the race win. In the Drivers' Championship, then, Chris Froggatt on 119 points, 73 for John Sawbridge, but Fabian Volvend on 65 points. That's the way it looks, the top three in the AM Drivers' Championship at the moment. Races.ferrari.com is the place where you will find all the information with regards to the Ferrari Challenge. And, of course, another 2 races to come at the Misano circuit tomorrow evening. Please make sure you join us for those. For the moment, from us here at Misano, thanks for watching. Bye-bye for now.